guys know me. I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from the Black Business School and Your Black World. And each week, you know, we in the Black Business School, we have Powernomics conversations with Dr. Claude Anderson, the one and only. Dr. Anderson is the founder of the Harvest Institute. He also runs it with his wonderful wife, Joanne. And also, he is the author of the books Powernomics, Black Labor, White Wealth, Dirty Little Secrets, and The Black History Reader. So first of all, Dr. Anderson, I didn't mean, you and I were having such a great conversation before everything started, and I had to jump in. I was like, okay, you're giving me all the good stuff. I want everybody to get the good stuff because you had a lot of good stuff to say about, you know, Donald Trump and everything else. You know, first, before we really dig into that, I want to just ask you real quick, you know, have you been keeping up? I know you live in D.C. and that's a political town and everything else, but have you really sort of been following everything that's been going on with Trump and politics and the, you know, this summit he's had with Kim Jong-un and all that stuff? Have you watched any of that?
Yes, well, I sort of tangentially watch it, but the great irony, Dr. Watkins, is black folk are being misled and bamboozled. They don't understand what's really going on. They're not conscious of what's going on, and they're taking Trump to be a fool. Trump is doing something that's very divisive and extremely dangerous, and he's very effective in it. And but he's using a technique he's using magic called misdirection, which means raise your right hand and wave your right hand if you don't want people to see your left hand. And right now, Donald Trump is intentionally, and using tweets and everything else, telling people, show people that, well, I'm not that confident, I'm no threat. He's the most dangerous man on the earth right now, and particularly in the United States. What he's doing is that he's using old techniques they use in brainwashing in the communist camps, 50 years ago, 70 years ago to be more specific. And see, in Korean War, we had the same triad that he's dealing with right now, which is China, which was communist, Russia, which was communist, and North Korea was communist. But they no longer call them communists anymore. But that's the triad. That's the group that's right now that's working with people are falling for it, believing that somehow he's a comical fool, he's a buffoon. He's not a buffoon. He's very, very effective and very dangerous. And what he's doing, he's using what we call brainwashing in the service. As I said, in the Marine Corps, in North Korea, in North China, we had over 7,000 POWs in those camps that had been captured in POW camps that were subjected to 3 years of brainwashing. And the brainwashing techniques is nothing but, most people think brainwashed is something like driving bamboo splinters between the knuckles, attaching battery cables to men's testicles, doing all this kind of stuff. That's not what brainwashing is. Brainwashing is a very sophisticated form of re-educating and reorienting people in a way that it creates some very specific achievements. And some of those achievements are, with Donald Trump, for example, the first thing is everything's to be divisive. Everything he's going to do is going to be extremely divisive. Divisive inside the White House, outside the White House, at every level of government, in every department, EPA, Education, Department of Justice, FBI. He's going to make sure everybody is at each other's throat. And in the Marine Corps, when it happens, they have broke down what we call a code of conduct, where people are taught and trained to work as a team. That's the first thing he's doing to the society. The society is not aware of it. The second thing he's doing is that he's legalizing and legitimizing one of our basic values, which is corruption, because and corruption and immorality. That's why he can say, hey, everybody around him going to have a very deep seat involvement in various forms of corruption and immorality. Almost every one of them, they're going to find out they've had all kinds of relationships. That's how they're going to be hired on that basis to make sure that the whole values of society, from the religious perspective or a moral perspective, is diminished down. He's going to redistribute all the resources to the higher level, to the well-off group in this country. He's doing that through his tax reforms. And we're saying that the rich is going to get richer, and the inequality between the groups are going to widen. He's going to do that. All these things, and I go through a whole bunch of things he's working. The same identical things. I'm not going to stretch your imagination anymore. Same things that happened in Korea. Same thing. We broke down. And what happened as a result of it is after the 7,000 prisoners we had that were captured, American prisoners.
Oh, it looks like Dr. Anderson froze. Can you hear me, Dr. Anderson?
Huh?
You froze for a second, but keep going. I couldn't hear you.
Okay, we had 7,000 POWs. They were all interned for 3 years, and the communists were so effective in this. The same thing Donald Trump is using, the same techniques. These techniques are what we call industrial management techniques, and and social psychological problem solving, and sometimes they call it social physiological inducement on people. All those things are working very effectively in our society. They're going to tear down your media. Your media is going to be totally dysfunctional. Your newspapers and the rest of they have no means of communicating, and they can follow the philosophy that says if you can't beat them, confuse them, don't join them, and everybody's going to wind up totally confused. And I got a whole bunch of things like redistributing the wealth, attacking all your basic institutions, institutionalizing new forms of morality. That's why he's going to. People say, why don't he turn over his tax return? He's not going to do that. He's going to legitimize corruption. And they said, well, we're going to get him on collusion. The biggest thing to get him on is emolument, which means his family and his friends are doing everything they can for graft and corruption around the world. They're totally restructuring the society, and everybody's looking at him as he's some kind of a buffoon. And he's not. He's very crafty. He's doing a fantastic job and very effective. But for black folk, my mother used to tell me, if you ever get a fool, put a string on him and take him and make him and let him pull you around and get some advantages for you. But Donald Trump is a fool. Black folks should be trying to lock in on him and trying to get some resources out of him while they can. I don't know how they do it, but they better should be doing it. Otherwise, black folk are going to be in a serious trouble. They're at the bottom of the pile, and trouble is coming. Donald Trump is a Manchurian candidate of the first order. That's why he's so aligned, and while he's trying his best to be closely affiliated, identified with those three elements we had in Korea: the Russians, communists, the Chinese, and North Korea.
So Dr. Anderson, you called Donald Trump the Manchurian candidate. Now, when I think about the Manchurian candidate, I think about that movie that I think Denzel Washington was in it. And basically it's this candidate that was, what I saw in the Manchurian candidate was a person that really wasn't, really a real person. Like, he kind of was representing somebody else's interests. They kind of been programmed to follow a specific agenda, to kind of, pursue a certain objective, using the country's resources, it's some sinister objective. Do you think that Trump is what makes you call Trump a Manchurian candidate? What is it that defines a Manchurian candidate for you?
Because he's gonna pretend he's pushing American interests when he's gonna push the interests of Russia. Putin, he's gonna push Russia's interests. He's gonna push North Korea with this guy hung, whatever his interests are. He's gonna push China's interests, and then he's gonna put it under the guise of globalization, trying to strengthen American society, or he's gonna try to impose tariffs, but not on those countries, but on his allies. He's going to divide the United States from all of his allies and make them weaker. They're going to divide them from most of the international organizations we've had. I can't think of all of them right now offhand. Military organizations. They're going to be one might be the G7 or something like that. There's 4 or 5 others. He's going to splinter those groups all the way up, and at the same time he's going to splinter them. He's going to closely align himself with those foreign enemies and elements. The same thing happened in Korea. I just sit back and laugh because my responsibility in the Marine Corps, my responsibility was to be a safety and survival engineer for my squadron. And I watched the social philological manipulation of people in those camps. We had a de-brainwashing center in Barbers Point, Hawaii. And they're going to go at, and he's using all the techniques that are typically taught in master's degree program and doctorate degree program in psychology in our big major university across America. And in Korea, most of those agents in North Korea, the North Koreans and also the Chinese, they got their degrees in the United States in social sciences and psychological sciences before they set up their system of brainwashing and create people to be Manchurian candidates. And after the war was ended, that's why 1/3 of all our prisoners, after we were free, after the war ended, never came back to the United States, became turncoats. And most of them were subjected, and they had no interest in returning to the United States. And then during the course of that encampment, under the Manchurian candidate practices and treatment and brainwashing, that not one prisoner out of 7,000 we had, not one prisoner ever escaped. They were so disoriented and so brainwashed and reoriented to the fact that not one escaped through an organized escape in Korea or in China. And most of those camps did not have any guards, didn't have fences, didn't have dogs, didn't have machine guns on the fences. They just couldn't do it because they got so confused. You watch the American society right now, and watch how people become increasingly confused, not knowing which way is up, which way is down. Watch black folk. Black folk right now are null and void. You don't see any action on behalf of black folk. Between racism in the society and the new things that Donald Trump put into effect, you got no black leadership, Blacks are an abandoned, obsolete labor class. They have no goal, have no agenda. They have no representation. They have no corporations. Their basic institutions was destroyed in doing slavery up to now, just like they were destroyed in brainwashing in Korea. We don't have any institution. Our institutions are all into minorities, poor folk, people of color, and political correctness. We got problems. That's why we're going to suffer first. Then the broader society is going to suffer right behind Black folk. And it's the same thing I laughed about overseas in the 1950s. I see the same identical thing happen with Donald Trump. Everybody thinks he's a fool and a buffoon. He's a very crafty man. He's very dangerous for the society in general.
All right, everybody. I'm talking to Dr. Claude Anderson. He's the author of the books Powernomics, Black Labor, White Wealth, The Black History Reader, and also Dirty Little Secrets. His website is harvestinstitute.org. That's harvestinstitute.org. He actually runs a think tank, and he also is actually pursuing lawsuits on behalf of people of color. I hope you guys will consider going there to make a donation. Also, if you're watching here, make sure that you hit the like button, the share button, subscribe button. Share this conversation with other people on your channel. We're promoting intelligent Black talk, intelligent Black conversations. We're not here for buffoonery and coonery and silliness. We're here for elevated discussions. And there's no better man to help lead that than Dr. Claude Anderson. So Dr. Anderson, I want to ask you about this. So recently, one of the things that people have said with Trump is that they've looked at his pardons. He's really been trying hard to pardon, Black folks. He pardoned a Black woman that was denied by President Obama, a woman who gotten 20 or 30 years in prison or life sentence for some drug conviction that she should have never been convicted on. He also pardoned the late Jack Johnson, little things like that. And there have been people who've said, this is nothing. This is just symbolic. This doesn't mean anything. In fact, there's actually been people who have suggested to him, his advisors have suggested to him that he pardoned even Marcus Garvey. And so people say, oh, this is just symbolic. This is just an appeal to get Black voters. This doesn't mean anything. But, I think the challenge for me was that a lot of what Obama did was symbolic. A lot of what Obama, did for Black folks was the same kind of symbolism. It just came from a different person. So symbolism, if symbolism is bullshit, then it's always bullshit. The bullshit doesn't turn into chocolate cake just because it's being delivered by somebody else. So I'm not saying that it's a great thing that he's doing all these things, but I'd be curious if it is the case that Trump is just trying to appeal to Black voters. Like for example, Trump could say, look, Black unemployment is lower under my regime than it ever was under Obama. Well, the data seems to support that, right? So what does this say? Does this make a case for some of those Black folks who say, you know what, I didn't like Obama, I don't really like Trump, but at least I got a job, and I'm okay with that. What do you think about that?
I think all that stuff is so comical. I wouldn't have to watch Saturday Night Live or watching what goes on in politics. And every time, the easiest people to trick in the world, I hate to say this because I love them, is Black folk. They go for the okie doke every damn time. Who cares if he pardons Jack Johnson back from the early 1910 for what he called violation of the Slave Act because he's good. Pardon, all that's BS, because that doesn't put one biscuit on Black folks' table in this country. It does not address the major issues. The major issues in the society is Black folk have control and ownership of practically nothing. They're an abandoned, obsolete labor class. They are the official underclass in America. And an underclass, Dr. Watkins, means those individuals who by the mere social economic conditions are predestined to live for the rest of their lives as either beggars or criminals. And people say, well, they're racist. I keep telling them, racism doesn't, we're going to solve race, you can't resolve it unless you go back to the original core, the roots of racism. Roots of racism is the maldistribution of 100% of all this nation's wealth, power, resource, land, privileges, and controls of all levels of government. And tell your listeners as soon as, even if I had the magical ability to say abracadabra and every white racist in America would disappear. There would be no more white racism in America. There would be no white racists. There would not be one white person who could be truly classified as a racist. So what? That doesn't help Black folk. You know why? It doesn't redistribute any resources back in their hands. It does not change their conditions. It doesn't change nothing by race. If white races never existed, if I got rid of the Ku Klux Klan and the Knights of the White Camellia, the Minutemen, if I got rid of all those radical militant groups, it does not help black folk unless you go back to the core, the purpose of slavery, which was the maldistribute. You got to put resources in the hands of black folk. Black folk own and control 1/2 or 1% of everything that's valuable and important with power attached to it. But on the other hand, they're bearing 6 to 7 times their fair share of everything that's bad. They're leading the nation. They're number one. They're number one in poverty. They're number one in incarceration. They're number one in the victims of homicides. They're number one in the fact that people can't get mortgages. They're number one in those who don't have no business lists. They're number one in receiving in the most hated group in America, called FBI reports. That's 6 to 7% of all hate crimes are committed against black folk. They're number one in everything you can think of as bad. So what are black folk? Why are they worried about who Donald Trump pardons? How does that help black folk? That's symbolic, that's ceremonious, it's insignificant, it's irrelevant, it's a wheel spinning activity. And again, Donald Trump has bamboozled and misdirected and redirected black folks' attention. Are you there?
Yeah, sorry about that. Well, what I would say is that I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. I mean, I don't really care a whole lot about pardoning people that are dead. That doesn't do anything for me. I was just thinking about the fact that if Obama were to have done the same thing, I know a lot of Negroes who'd be celebrating and dancing in the street, right? And then when Trump does it, it's like, oh, well, that's just symbolism. Again, if it's bullshit, it's always bullshit. Bullshit does not become chocolate cake just because somebody else is serving it to you. It's always BS. It's always worthless. It's always meaningless. And so I agree with you. And I think that was a great point you just made. And I asked that question literally to lay that point on the table. I think that we need substance, no matter who the politician is. So, I think, let me ask you this. There are a lot of people who say, that no black person should even talk to Trump, that nobody should even, if he invites you to have a meeting at the White House, you should say no, do not talk to this guy. Don't even entertain the idea of a meeting. I don't agree with that. I think you should listen in case he happens to need some votes and he wants to do something substantive. If he asked to meet with Dr. Claude Anderson, I would support that meeting because I know you're not going to ask for something symbolic. You would ask for something real. And if he delivered you something real, then I would trust that there was a benefit to both parties for this. If Donald Trump reached out to you today, Dr. Anderson, and said, because I know Obama wasn't going to meet with you. I know Obama didn't want to talk to people like you. His administration did not want to talk to black people who really wanted to do something for black people. He met with Al Sharpton on economic policy about 40, 50 times. And Al Sharpton ain't never ever had no degree in economics. He didn't write Powernomics. He don't know nothing about cooperative economics or wealth building. You do. If Trump wanted to meet with you, Dr. Anderson, would you take that meeting, and why would you take that meeting, and what would happen in that conversation?
Well, the biggest thing, you have to do it in such a way where it's clinically non-infectious, where all of a sudden you don't come about being perceived as being a clown or a Sambo, an Uncle Tom, or someone who's seeking meritorious manumission from the white society in general, and from Donald Trump in particular. But I've had people from out of Houston, some black Republicans out of Houston. I had black Republicans across the United States, out of Ohio, and even in Chicago, saying, Dr. Anderson, would you speak to Trump? I said, I'll speak to him under my terms. And I got a whole list of things I want him to do, but not one is symbolic and ceremonious. Are there things, I said, I would talk to them and say, here are the things I want for black folk, tangible things. I don't ever want black folk to pursue anything when you got a major structural problem where they own and control nothing, that they're still bearing the legacies of slavery and Jim Crow segregation. I said, the first thing I'll say, I want you to pursue and classify blacks as an exceptional group of people in this country and put them into a protected class. Go back, I want you to put them back just like like they were in 1866 in a protected class, and just like you put American Indians into a protected class and been giving them benefits now for 150 years, just like you got white women in a protected class. I want black folk classified in a protected class which means they should be able to go into businesses and go into different things and not have to compete with other groups. Just like we got the Yazoo up in Japan, where they have a leather industry. They are protected, so nobody can compete with them with leather in Japan. I want black folk to be in a protected class where they can get resources. Secondly, I want them to go back and put some form of reparations involved. Right now, I know 98% of the white folks were against blacks being freed from slavery in the Civil War, and today opposed to blacks getting reparations. But the only way you can correct racism in this country is by putting some resources into the hands of black folk, and do that on a non-competitive basis. And when you find some blacks that I don't want anything, then you shut your mouth. If you don't want anything for reparations, you keep your mouth shut and go sit your ass down. That's what you. But black folk cannot compete with only 1/2 of 1% making up 13% of the population. Well, they don't own anything of importance. And quit telling black folk about going out. Black folk don't need jobs; they need wealth. Because why is that? Because you see, whites got 99% of all the wealth. 87% of it is frozen. That 87% of all the income that a white person in a white society gets every year is unearned income. And you want to put blacks over into a category where they're looking for a job where they can only get money by performing, called earned income. No, I want black folk. I want black folk to be put into a category of receiving unearned income. I want black folks to also I want you to go back and stop the busing in this country, and go back and rebuild these black communities in this country, and put up magnet schools in all these damn black communities, and put the best technology, the best teachers, best materials in those schools, and at least 2 magnet schools in every black community, and make those schools so attractive that whites be trying to, and other groups are trying to get to move into the black community to get in those black schools, rather than busing 75% of the black kids out of those communities into white schools by keep preaching that somehow a black child can't learn unless he's sitting next to a white child. That is insulting and it's ridiculous. I want them also to be able to go back and look at I want to go back and retrieve that $57 million that was stolen out of Freedmen banks. It was stolen out of Freedmen banks back in between doing Reconstruction from 1865 to 1875. That's billions of dollars. I want them to fulfill the 1866 Indian Treaty that Obama refused to. They owe black folk billions of dollars in that. I got a whole list of things that I would like for Trump to do, but all of them are tangible, measurable. No symbolism. I don't give a damn about whether or not he names a Martin Luther King Boulevard or Rosa Parks Street or put up basketball courts on a black neighborhood. I want tangible. Give black folk the money. That's the only way you get rid of white supremacy. You get away with white supremacy by redistributing some of those resources back into the hands of black folk where they can be a competitive group. I can give you a whole list of things we had time, but that's just a few.
Well, let me ask you this, Dr. Anderson, and everybody who's watching, make sure you hit the like button, the share button, subscribe button, all that stuff before you go. Please take a second and do that right now. Also, make sure you join theblackbusinessschool.com. It's a great place to educate your whole family on wealth and everything else. We have a lot of great faculty, attorneys, PhDs, black folks that can really teach you and teach you at a fraction of what you probably paid to go to a white university. Now, Dr. Anderson, I want to ask you this.
I'm sorry, you cut off.
Oh, sorry.
Repeat it again, you cut off.
Well, I want to ask you this question. So during the Obama presidency, you had 8 years of a black president. Your Powernomics principles are accepted all around the world. Everybody, that I know, at least gives legitimacy to the ideas in your books. Most people love what you're saying. Most black people like what you're saying. Well, during the Obama presidency, did you approach Obama with some of your ideas? Did you approach the administration? Did you approach them with the 1866 Indian Treaty and explain what was going on with that, why black folks owe billions of dollars? Like, did you have any communication with them whatsoever? And if you did, what happened?
Thank you, Lordy. You just asked a $1 million question. Yes, I put out one of the Harvard Institute's newsletters. I wrote a 19-page document, a newsletter that was addressed straight to Obama's. It was taken into the White House. It was UPS to it. It was emailed to him and delivered by postal service. That says, here are the things you need to do for black folk in America. Since black folk have prayed for centuries to have a black warrior raise up from the bowels and the bellies of our society, and be able to know black folks suffering and be able to fight their battles. And if you're now the new black president, this was in 2010, and go to the harvestinstitute.org website and pull up the newsletter on that was sent to Obama. And in that thing will tell them things like, the first thing you need to do is go back and rebuild these black communities, point one. Rebuild these black communities, point one. And then put on your staff a czar, a person who will be specifically responsible for carrying out mandates of affecting black folk across this country. Got to be his sole responsibility to oversee that and make sure it is accomplished. 2 or 3, in every way you've got 70% of all black people in America live in and around about 10 major urban areas. Go into those 10 major urban areas where black folk reside before they become gentrified and privatized. This was back in 10, now they're almost too late now. Go in there and in there, establish that set of redevelopment banks. Put money into redevelopment banks, not directly into black folks, but put it in redevelopment banks where black folk can come in there and borrow low interest, long-term loans on a revolving loan fund with a maximum of 1.5% interest. And so they can do it, so they can build businesses and borrow money and go borrow money from banks. And that money would be subordinatable to any bank money. To set up a special program that and move it and transfer all the businesses out of this country to third world nations, and started doing offshore banking in Panama and the Caribbean and in Singapore. Set up special programs so that money, so that you bring that money back to this country, and the interest you pay would go into those special revolving loan fund banks in those major urban areas to build industries and business for black folk. Another point, tell them also, and once in a protected class, that you set up special programs to build industries that were relocated, bring them back to the United States. Before the civil rights movement, we had over 200 down nothing. Most of those industries went to Korea, South Korea, China, Formosa, and bring back industries where black folk can learn how to produce, produce jobs rather than look for jobs. Black folk start practicing group economics around their own industries, their own businesses. Teach them how to dominate. I went through all this stuff. Dominate in whether they dominate in population and consumer patterns, dominate with businesses. And lastly, set up special program I can't think what I call the program now. Where all these black kids that are graduating from college can't find jobs, set up something almost like the teacher, what's the thing with the Corps they had back in a program back in the 60s. Why not teacher Corps, but we set up special program for black kids who can get jobs. And it's almost like a disaster corps kind of thing, where they can get jobs, making decent money, working with huh?
You mean Job Corps?
No, it's like Job Corps, similar to Job Corps, but it looks almost like a disaster. We always got forest fires, we got floods all over the country, we got all kind of problems in the country. Hire those black kids and train them to be able to go around the country and have jobs. And I had a whole bunch of things in the program. Sent it to him. But guess what? He didn't respond. But I had 3 newspapers that called and asked me about it. One newspaper out of San Diego, California, one out of Grand Rapids, Michigan, and one out of Colorado says, we saw this. Why didn't Obama do stuff for black folk? Why didn't he help his own people? But he felt, and he had received meritorious manumission and says that I'm not going to go that route. I'm not going to do it. And so he said, because I represent all the people. And common sense, if you represent all the people, black folk are some of all the people. Why didn't you represent them? But even more importantly, is that you violate the Constitution. Obama's supposed to be teaching constitutional law up at Harvard. In the Constitution, he knew that the 13th and 14th Amendment and Equal Protection Clause were put into the 13th Amendment and the 14th Amendment and the Civil Rights Clause specifically and solely for black folk. And that means, and they should not be equated with other groups. And then the other groups should not be using those. All other people got their equal protection under the 5th Amendment. But unfortunately, that Obama did nothing, and so he didn't put one biscuit on a black person's table because he used this whole broad terms, minorities, poor folk, people of color, which says nothing but the old thing called trickle down. I'm not going to give anything to black folk. I'm going to give it to everybody else, and if anything's left of a trickle down, black folk can get something.
Yeah, well, you know, I actually refer to that, what you talk about. I always call it trickle down liberalism, because it's just like trickle down economics that Reagan used, where, yeah, as you mentioned, you give something to the top and you assume it's going to trickle down. Obama's Ronald Reagan moment was when they asked him about black unemployment, and he said, "The rising tide will lift all boats," meaning that if we elevate the whole economy, then all the boats are going to lift. The black people's votes and all that. That was his way of. That was when he transformed into Ronald Reagan in my mind. Because you try to tell me that if you take care of all these white folks, that they're going to come take care of us, and that's just not the case. And the reason I asked you that question, Dr. Anderson, is because there were a lot of people who basically said that Obama didn't do anything for black people because black people didn't ask for anything. No, he didn't ignore black people because black people were not asking for anything. Black people were ignored because they didn't listen to the black people who were asking for something. You know, I remember every week I would go, even Reverend Jesse Jackson, to his credit, always argued that there should be a Marshall Plan, for all the urban cities. He said that every single week on his show, but they never had Jesse Jackson to the White House. They had Al Sharpton to the White House about 50 times. You wrote that letter, and I want everybody to read this letter. I'm gonna show everybody this letter. We're gonna talk about this letter later in the Black Business School to kind of break this down. But you wrote this letter, and you laid out clear policy recommendations. You understand economics. Al Sharpton does not. So why would you not be invited to the White House? Why would they ignore you, ignore other people who have similar ideas or other good ideas, Julianne Malveaux and others, and pay attention to the Negroes who were going to foot shuffle and get along? So my position is, I don't really care what Donald Trump is doing. If he's trying to trick black voters into voting for him, well, too bad. Obama should have did more. If he's using symbolism to get black folks to support him, well, too bad. Obama should have done something real, and then maybe we know the difference between something real and something symbolic. You know, because you can't sit here and say that 40 million people were silent about what they wanted. That is an insult to black people. When anybody suggests that black people we didn't know what we wanted, that means you're saying that we ain't nothing but a group of 40 million idiots, that we are all so retarded that we can't all see, that we ain't got no scholars, we ain't got no lawyers, we ain't got no business people, we don't have no intellectuals, we don't have no leaders, nobody who can sit down and write a goddamn policy. Seriously, get out of here with that. So when I would hear that from the administration or from people defending the nonsense that came out of that administration, I just looked at them and said, you sound like you couldn't be more insulting to black people than if you worked for the Ku Klux Klan. You sound like a Klansman right now when you literally want to try to convince me that 40 million black people couldn't even sit down and figure out what we wanted, and that's why we were never invited to the table. Get out of here with that nonsense. So I'm not really happy with Trump. I don't really care about Trump that much. I agree with you. Everything you said about him being dangerous. He's a crook. He's a dirtbag. But it's not like I'm looking at the previous 8 years and feeling like that was a wonderful time for black people either. It wasn't. It was just all it was. And everybody listening, pay attention to me when I tell you this. This is what the Obama administration was to black people. It was 8 years of feel-good moments. It was nothing more than a political version of opium for the masses. It made you feel good to be able to see a black man in the White House, and it made me feel good too, but it gave you no substance whatsoever. No progress was made. Every bad black neighborhood that existed in 2007 is still the same neighborhood right now. So we have to learn the difference between substance and flash. I'm done talking, Dr. Anderson. I'm gonna be quiet. I want to ask you a question about this. So let's talk about solutions. Go ahead.
May I respond to what you just said for a second?
Please
because
do.
You're right on target. I agree with you 100%, Dr. Watson. But see, and about the demanding something. But to be truthful with you, see, it wasn't even necessary for black folks to even demand. You know why? Because on the whole point of politics is called quid pro quo. Something for something. One hand washes the other, and you scratch my back, I scratch yours. Obama knew when black folk gave him 98% of their vote twice. That was twice as much vote from the blacks than any other group in the country. He had an obligation. Black folks should to do something for black folk. Black folks should, even though black folks must demand, But even if they didn't demand, he had an obligation to do something for black folk. But he refused to do it because talking about he represents all the people. And people ask him, well, why don't you do something for black folk? He said, well, why should I do anything for black folk? Uh, 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 because they are the people that have been crippled, and that's the law. The law is mandates that no group should be put higher in an order of precedence than black folk. That's what those laws were put in place for in the Constitution, in the second Constitution, which was the 14th Amendment, and those civil rights laws. They violate those laws. It says that, and those laws say very specifically. And what I'm gonna do for a second, let me take 1 second, and let me see if I can find something here to tell you, where it says very specifically what. Just for your group. Let me. I'm gonna look and see if I got some years. I want to give you the actual. And most importantly, mandated. Here's what blacks have the same rights as whites. Okay, that's what the Emancipation Proclamation was about. And it said that blacks must have the same rights as whites. And if whites are getting everything and getting all the benefits, then why are blacks getting them? Why are you giving them to the Arabs, Asians, Hispanics, and you're not giving them to blacks? You violated that. Let's go down to the Civil Rights Law of 1866, where it said they were supposed to be correcting the Dred Scott. When they passed the Civil Rights Act, it says blacks, listen to this, Dr. Watkins, blacks shall have the full and equal benefits of all laws and proceedings as enjoyed by white citizens, and that the government is mandated to lift the badges and incidents of slavery off the backs of black folk. Did you hear what I said? Could you hear me?
Yes, I sure could.
Dr. Watkins.
Yes.
Okay, okay, then it says that it is mandated that blacks should have the full and equal benefit. These are the intent of all those laws. This is the intent in the write-up for the laws, that blacks should have the full and equal benefit of all laws and proceedings as it is joined by white citizens, and that government has a mandate to lift the badges and incidents of slavery off the shoulders of black folk. Then if you become the president, black folk right now are carrying 6 to 7 times their burdens from the legacies of slavery, and nothing has been done for them in 500 years. Why didn't you do something? Why didn't you lift those burdens? If you didn't, you violated the law. Let's go down to another one. Let's look at the 14th Amendment. It says in the 14th Amendment that black slaves are, it says that black folks must be treated in all manners, that white folk are treated under similar conditions. And yet, here we are, and let's take the Indians. Obama called 562 white Indians to the White House every year he was in office, except for the first 6 years, and gave them $3.5 billion to white Indians, but they invite one person benefits and be treated in all manners as all people. Every black politician, every white politician knows those. They know the 14th Amendment, they know the 13th Amendment, they know the 15th Amendment, they know the civil rights law, but none of them ever abide by the laws. And talking about we are a nation of laws, get off your ass and do something for black folk. They won't do it. And because in this society, blacks are a third rail. Nobody wants to be touched doing anything for black folk, because they know that in this country right now that black folk are still a hated and despised group. They know that almost 90% of all whites still hate and despise black folk, and 63 to 64% of all the immigrants don't want to be around black folk. That's your issue, and black folk must start demanding what they need. But once they put a person in office or support a political party, they shouldn't have to beg that political party, that person, to do something for them. That person must ascribe to the mandates of politics. Give equal benefits back to black folk. Quid pro quo, something for something. I put you in office, you owe me, deliver to me. Don't deliver in the symbolism and ceremonial stuff. Deliver benefits that I can count. Tell your students and my people, don't accept anything that they can't count and can't take to the bank. They can't take to the bank, tell them you don't want it. You want land, resources and privileges and rights. And now and rights, those that deals with assets. Privileges come from possessing something. Rights only come from power, from resources.
All right. Everybody who's listening, I'm talking to Dr. Claude Anderson. Dr. Anderson is the founder of the Harvest Institute. The URL for the Harvest Institute is harvestinstitute.org. That's harvestinstitute.org. I hope you guys will go over there and make a donation to help with the lawsuits. He's been filing lawsuits for reparations. Only person out here really doing that. So I hope you'll support that. Also, he's written books, Powernomics, Black Labor, White Wealth, The Black History Reader, and Dirty Little Secrets. These are the books that I want your children to read before they read anything else. I don't think they should be reading books by European historians or old English literature and all this other stuff they're telling them in school before they read books like Powernomics. So make sure that you do that. In fact, this week, Dr. Anderson, I went down to Freedom Home Academy International, which is a school down here in Chicago. It's a beautiful charter school, African Center School. It's got a lot of Black kids in there that were really doing Black history. And it was really fascinating to see this in terms of, you mentioned earlier, you said that there's a lot of people who believe that a Black child can't learn unless they're next to a white child, that putting your kids in these white schools is going to be better for them because they get access to the resources and the best teachers and all this other stuff. And I'm gonna tell you, when I went to Freedom Home Academy International, I've never seen children that smart in my life. They had 5-year-olds that were on the stage, and they would throw out a word, and they had to define the word like that instantly. So they would say, they would say, "What is colonialism?" And the little kid would say, "Colonialism is a system by which a group of people go to another country to extract resources and to exploit them for political and economic gain." Right? Then they say, "So what is an adjective?" And they would define an adjective is a part of a sentence that da 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 da. And these were 5-year-old children. These were 5-year-old kids. I ain't never seen 5-year-olds do that in my life. And I think that it almost seems to me that a lot of the reason that we fall for the stupid tricks is because society keeps us as stupid people, and it starts with the way we're, what we're exposed to in school. We got a lot of our kids graduating from public schools can't even read, spent more time fighting at school than they spent learning, spent more time worried about how they were dressed and relative to how much they were actually learning in terms of math and English and everything else. And ultimately, I think that part of the reason that we fall for the stupid tricks in politics is because from the very beginning, we were never taught in school to love ourselves. We were always taught to find a way to fit in, find a way to be accepted, find a way to not get kicked out. Also, we were never taught to really empower ourselves, to really fight for something, to really believe that we are worthy of fighting for something. And so when I saw these little children, that literally knew 5-year-olds that knew definitions of terminology that I know 30-year-olds who don't know this stuff. They asked them, what is capitalism? The 5-year-old could define capitalism like that. Most 30-year-olds can't define capitalism like that. To me, children like that are not the ones who are gonna grow up and fall for something stupid. They're not gonna, care if the president can do the electric slide and eats barbecue chicken and sings Al Green songs. They're gonna sit down and they're gonna read books like Powernomics, and they're gonna show up and demand something. Do you think that that's sort of what we need is sort of a direct overhaul in terms of how our children are even raised in this country, in terms of getting away from these systems that are designed to keep us blind, deaf, dumb, and stupid, and actually create infrastructure and institutions that build children in the image that we need them to be?
Well, first, you're on track. And see, the great sadness is that why would anybody with with more than a third grade education would say the solution for my children is to socially integrate them and bus them into white schools so they can sit beside white children. Now here are black folk, black people that were denied a right to an education for 360 years under slavery. Whites enacted laws that said that if I catch a white person teaching a black person to read and write, it'll cost them $100 and 39 lashes with a whip to teach a black person how to read and write. And that was during slavery. And even during slavery, when those black people came out of slavery, that 96% then, because of imposed ignorance imposed on them, spread on them, painted on them, and so 96% of black folk could not read and write in 1866. But in a 30-year time period between 1866 and 1896, those black folk came together and pooled their money. They started selling water, wood, coal, ice, flowers, anything to raise enough money to build their own school systems. And they built their own school systems. And so in that 30-year time period between 1866 and 1896, they worked and by themselves, they set a world's record of academic achievement that has never been broken. You hear people boasting about how bright, how smart Jewish kids are and how Asian kids are. They cannot break that record. That in that 30-year time period between 1866 and 1896, Black folk reduced their illiteracy rate by 50% in 30 years. No group can ever boast that. They can beat that by saying they came out of slavery in a 30-year time period, cut their illiteracy rate in half. Cut the illiteracy rate in half in 30 years by themselves. At the same time, they were cutting their illiteracy rate in half in that 30-year time period. Whites were coming into this country who 96% of them could not read and write. 96% of all immigrants coming from Europe could not read and write when they got here. They could not think above probably the 3rd or 4th grade level. But yet they went into the management system and they got all the rights and privileges and got the jobs and business and industries. And Black folk got nothing out of it. So Black folk, now here Black folk come in the 1950s and then get social integration. What do? They turn around and ask the same people who denied their children education or gave them a marginal education for 400 some years to educate their why are they going to, if I was white, why would I want to educate your children to compete with my children? See, Black folk got to go back and rebuild their own darn communities, hold their own people accountable. We got enough Black educators in this country and put their feet to the fire and said, no, don't let any kid graduate from high school unless he's got a scheme in his head or a scheme and a skill in his body to be able to do what he needs to do to earn a living and earn respect and dignity in our society. That must be imposed. And start these kids in elementary school thinking about business and business acumen. And don't let them graduate from high school again without the skills. Teach trade skills in high school, and set up more trade schools across this country for Black folk, and send more to junior college rather than senior colleges. I got all these Blacks graduating from school now with master's degrees, Dr. Watkins, and they don't master a damn thing because I got them working in McDonald's and Burger Kings, with a doctor's degree, a master's degree, because they don't have any in businesses in the Black community. The whole thing is upside down and backwards. Black folk must be responsible for educating their own children and don't depend on whites to educate their children to be competitive. Don't be against anybody else. And I don't want Blacks to be against whites because all whites are not bad. I don't want to be against immigrants. I want to be against the immigration policies. And I wanted Obama to have created a Marshall Plan in this country. Back to your earlier point. He should have induced a Marshall Plan to redevelop this, not only every urban city where Black folk live, but to be able to bring new resources, wealth, and power into the hands of Black folk. That's the only way you can ever reduce and eradicate racism. You cannot eliminate racism, whether it's in education, employment, or in business, or in politics, unless you redistribute some resources into the hands of the Black folk. Otherwise, you're wasting your time and playing games. That's why nothing has changed in 500 years in race matters in this country, because nobody wants to redistribute the resources so that Black folk can be a competitive and self-sufficient and independent people, Dr. Watkins.
Well, I think you said enough right there, and I appreciate that. I mean, I think that it's I'm real big on this idea that we need to have our own systems. I think that we need children that learn how to create systems and manage systems, develop systems, create structure. So that means building companies, building educational systems, developing codes of conduct, developing our own ceremonious, ritual-based kinds of processes that allow us to validate each other and validate ourselves. I think that when I went to visit, lately I've been real interested in schools that are run by Black people, independent schools, and I've seen some of the best schools around. And one of the things that I know for sure is that if we were to support the building of these schools the same way we support a new movie that comes out, when Disney puts out like a Black Panther type of movie, we could have our own school system in about 2 weeks. It wouldn't take that long to fund a new school system. So I think that, to Black people that are listening, that's why I encourage you to lead your children, lead them to be able to develop systems and not just find a way to fit into somebody else's system, because these systems really weren't built for you. So Dr. Anderson, I'll let you get the last word on this. So in terms of just finishing off with the politics conversation and stuff like that, you've talked about the importance of developing other forms of institutions like think tanks and political action groups to achieve what you discuss in Powernomics as vertical integration of politics. Vertical integration of politics. So can you kind of speak to that a little bit in terms of what we want to think about? I don't want to just complain about Trump or complain about Obama. I think it's better to make sure we end with concrete action steps that we could take that will empower us in future elections.
Let me try to see if I can symbolize it for you. The thing that we need in politics is a very simple thing. In your mind right now, can picture in your mind a triangle. You know what a triangle is, right in your mind, okay? Picture a triangle, and in that triangle, draw a line about halfway, almost near the center, all the way from one side to the other. And then you go up about a few inches from that and draw another line across. That'll give you 3 levels. And with the biggest block of that triangle at the bottom, the base of the triangle. And what that should be, black going to be a power group in this country. That group should be the masses of black folk. These are the community activists. These are the people these are your workers, your bees, who are going to carry out the programs that you need. You need, just like, and white folk got this down pat. See, and in their society, they would call those the Ku Klux Klan, the Liberty Party, all these different organizations they got, which you see around the country. In every neighborhood that's running out, that's carrying the water for the race, the activists. Then above that, if you're going to get power, you go above that and the next level up. You have to, that's where you put in your think tanks. You have to bring together the best black minds in the country and put them at the next level up over that big blast mace, that baseline of black activists. Put a group over that for think tanks that focus strictly solely on correcting the major core problems in America. That's political and economics, social economics, and let them develop strategies, techniques, roadmaps, cookbook, recipes. And the next level up. Then you go up one more level up to the peak of that triangle. You know what's up there? You got to have a money class. You got to have people with money. And when you get that peak up there, that means your black overclass, they had money. Then what you do when you get that structure, the people at the peak got the money. They then put the money into place to set up those think tanks. They fund them. That's like the Koch brothers, all these white, rich billionaire whites. They sitting at that peak of that triangle. They're putting money. They're donated into nonprofit institutes, think tanks every day. Over in the United States, we got over 5,000 white think tanks that's sitting in the center, and they're being subsidized by white corporations, white billionaires. We got about 568 white multi-billionaires in America. They are funding those groups in the center by giving them money so they can plan, strategize, come up with cookbooks, recipes, and go on television, radio shows to promote their issues, their concerns, and to maintain the status quo on race matters. That's in the center. And then and once you get those people in the center funded, the think tanks and corporations, they can then work with the people in the lower level and that big masses of community activists and carry out those plans and strategies. That is what you call, that's what you call a social economic power structure. You got to have 3 levels. Big level with the community activists, people who are willing to do the work, can do it, and are readily available. You go above that and develop the intellectual level that can develop the strategies, the techniques, and cookbooks. And above that, you got to have a financing source. But if you can't get those 3 together, you can't do it. It cannot be done in theory or practice without those 3 elements.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Anderson. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. I think that, we could talk all day about how things are being done incorrectly, but I think at the end of the day, we always have to make sure we figure out how to do things right. So Dr. Anderson, I guess, let me know if I missed anything, but I want everybody to know that you can actually follow Dr. Anderson's research at his think tank, the Harvest Institute, and actually make a donation, especially given that these lawsuits are expensive. So I hope you'll support. The website is harvestinstitute.org. That's harvestinstitute.org. His books, Powernomics, Black Labor, White Wealth, The Black History Reader, and Dirty Little Secrets. They can be purchased all over the place. Say it again.
Yeah, and I said in The Black History Reader, 101 questions that they never thought to ask. And go back and also remind them, would you, Dr. Watkins, that they really want to find out about Obama, that letter. Tell them to go to the harvestinstitute.org and look at the articles and pull down. There's a 19 page article about things he should do for black folk. He didn't do one of them. But here's the great irony in conclusion. You know what? Most of the points that Trump campaigned on, guess where he got them from? He got them out of that newsletter. I'm telling you, go back to the newsletter, and I think it was 2010. I think it's October 2010 or October 2011. Go to the harvestinstitute.org, pull down that newsletter, and look at the points on there, and go look at what Trump's been campaigning on. Everything in there that Trump campaigned on all the way through his year, through 2016 and in 2017, he based it on extracting it out of that newsletter. You asked me once, what would I do? What I would do is Trump already copycatted most of it. He copycatted everything about globalization and redevelopment, all these different things, about doing reciprocity when you go into a country demanding that you get equal funding. I said, don't go invade a country unless you can extract out enough money and resources to bring it back to this country to subsidize redevelopment banks in black communities. And also that when tourists, when immigrants come to this country, to enact laws, black history laws, that every education programs where every immigrant must learn something about black folks' achievement and investments, and then this country's indebtedness to black folk before they can get citizenship in this country. All that's it's in September, October of 2010. Go look at that and tell all your black listeners and ask, why didn't Obama do any of those things? Even when the newspapers ask, why won't he do it?
Well, I'll let everybody know. I want everybody to know that if you can't find the letter on the Harvest Institute, or you can't find it online, it's also on our social media platform, blaggenuf.com, BLAGGENUF, BLAGGENUF. Make sure you join blaggenuf.com. That's where we have real conversations. There is no censorship from Facebook. Facebook's not watching what we say. They're not going to be able to stop what we say. So go to blaggenuf.com, BLAGGENUF.com. And you can take a look at the letter. I just put the letter, a big chunk of it, on my page on Black Enough. The other thing, and what I did was I put some of it on my page, and the rest is also connected to the original letter of the Harvest Institute. So everybody go take a look at that. And the reason it's important to do that is for a couple things. One is to remind people, black people ain't stupid. Our leaders, our scientists are like Dr. Anderson, our scholars are as smart as the scholars that get invited to the White House. But what happens is that the people that get invited to the White House are the ones who are willing to play ball. If you were black, whether it's during the Obama presidency or the Trump presidency, if you're black and you're being invited to the White House, it's usually because you ain't gonna ask for nothing. It was usually because you were gonna roll over and carry water for whatever BS the administration wanted to push. So you want to read this letter, number one, to know black people ain't stupid. We were asking for something. Don't ever let anybody tell you that the reason black folks didn't get done is because they didn't ask for nothing. We had people asking for things on a regular basis, and they were not listening. Me and Russell Simmons had to bang the door down to get them to listen to our letter on incarceration. We had to damn near threaten them with 100 celebrity signatures on their list before they even listened to us. Dr. Anderson wrote his letter. So that's the first reason you should read it. Second reason you should read it is because you want to understand what's going on right now. Trump and his people, they're not trying to appeal to every black person. They're not trying to necessarily win votes from black people who love the Democrats no matter what, who will always carry water for the Democrats. They're trying to talk to the black people who are disgruntled. They're talking to the black people who want support, who want economic independence, who are tired of being left out. They're talking to the ones who say, look, we don't really want to beg for jobs. We want to start businesses. They're talking to the black folks who are like, look, I just want to do well by my family, educate my kids, live in a good neighborhood, and build something, leave a legacy for my children. That's who they're appealing to. And what's unfortunate for the Democrats is that it's actually working for some of those people because they saw right through the nonsense. So go read that letter and debate it, talk about it. We need to have those conversations. And maybe next time when the Democrats or the Republicans step up and ask for your vote, I don't care who you vote for. I don't care if you vote for a third party. I don't care what you do with your vote. That's your decision. But what I do care about is that you think it through and you make sure that they represent the interests of you, your family, and your community before you give anybody your support, Democrats included. So, Dr. Anderson, thank you very much for your time. It was great to speak to you, my friend.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I sure can. Can you hear me?
Okay, I think it was okay. And tell me when they read that newsletter. Remember that went out in 2010 to Obama with the Democrats. He did absolutely nothing. Democrats did nothing. And that same newsletter was picked up because it was sent to Donald Trump's headquarters when he first started indicating he's going to run. And as a Republican and a white, he did nothing. Never in the history of this nation has either the Democratic Party or the Republican Party ever done anything significant for Black folk in 460 years. And but if they read that letter, that newsletter, they can compare between something going to Obama and Donald Trump picking it up and using it to run and become the president of the United States. By every point that's in that newsletter, that's where Trump got it from. So if you'd ask me what some of the things I would have demanded of Trump is in that newsletter, but he didn't call me back just like Obama didn't.
Well,
but I love you all. Take care.
Yeah, you too, Dr. Anderson. Thank you very much, my friend. And thank you all for hanging out with us. Make sure you go support Dr. Anderson, harvestinstitute.org. Introduce your children to this scholar. This is the greatest scholar of our generation. You know, this is a guy that is absolutely without question, the leader that's going to be most impactful, I think, in terms of the ideas that he shares that are beneficial long-term for Black people, or at least he's right there in the top 2 or 3. I don't include myself. I got another 30, 40 years before I work to get to that status. But what I will say to you is that these are the people that really care about you. These are the people that are really fighting for you. And so a lot of times what happens is that because our self-esteem is low, we have people that will love somebody that doesn't love them back, just because that person is shiny, cool, and rich and famous and powerful. Well, you can't do that. It's just like love, just like in a relationship. Some people want to date somebody just because that's the prettiest girl in the school. Well, if the prettiest girl in the school treats you like trash, you need to go leave her and get with a girl that actually loves you back. You deserve love too. You deserve support too. And what I saw with the Democratic Party, and I'm just being 100% honest here, I know people get mad at me about it because I'm not going along with the bandwagon. I'm not saying the bullshit that you're hearing on TV. I'm not following along with the crowd. I'm saying what comes to my heart and what I actually see. And what I saw, and I saw a lot that a lot of people don't get to see because I sat right next to a lot of very important people as they had these conversations. I saw the wool being pulled over Black folks' eyes and this underlying assumption that Black people are too stupid, they are too ignorant, too backwards, and too distracted to really actually fight for anything meaningful. They literally felt like if you just give Black folks a bucket of chicken and some watermelon and a pool party, they're going to be happy as a lark, and then the grown folks can go in the other room and split up the real money. So ultimately, you got to stop doing this. You got to stop being political whores. We act like political whores because we get used up and don't nobody give us nothing in return except for 2 nickels on the desk, and we thanking them for those 2 nickels. You need people that actually are going to fight for something real. Ain't none of these sons of bitches going to get my vote unless you bring in something real. So Democrats, if you're listening, if you want my attention on anything you do, use the word reparations on a regular basis. If you're not using the words like that, then you don't exist to me. Same thing with the Republicans. I don't care. I don't hold it against them that they have certain policies that some people don't agree with or whatever. But it's like, look, it's wide open for you. Come with something substantive and you'll probably get a few Black votes. And I'm not going to get mad at those people who say I'm tired of this nonsense. So anyway, that's it. That's the reality. That's what it is. I wanted Dr. Anderson to address this because he was, as you know, he was once the assistant secretary of commerce or something like that. So he knows the political game very well. He knows the economic game very well. He knows military strategy very well. He's a scholar. He's a great man. He's a great guy, and I just respect him a lot. So anyway, last thing I'm gonna say before I go is make sure you hit the like button, share button, subscribe button. Hit all those buttons. The thumbs up button if you're on YouTube. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Also, make sure you join us at blackenough.com. That's our social media platform we just created for Black people that want to be free. So go to blackenough, BLAGGENUF.com. Doesn't mean you have to be Black to be there, but just know this was created for Black people. So the same way we go into your institutions and we're not necessarily as comfortable as we want to be, well, you can come into our institution, but you may not always be comfortable because we're going to keep it 100 all the time. So feel free to join the conversation of Black Enough. That's where it's going to continue. I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins. I'm out of here. Last but not least, I want to remind you of this. If you haven't signed your children up for Black Black Millionaires of Tomorrow, our digital program that we have for children on wealth building. It's an awesome program. We teach real estate, we teach stocks and bonds, we teach investing 101, we teach them all about money. There are self-study exams, downloadable PowerPoints, animated videos that our team spent hundreds of hours developing, and it's very, very good. And we have the only university in the world for Black children that I know of, and you're invited to join. You can go to blackmillionairesoftomorrow.com. That's blackmillionairesoftomorrow.com. I'm out of here, guys. Have a good day, and I'll see you soon. Peace.